Awesome. So, hi everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. Once again, thank you so much for joining me today for our first generation series. And if you aren't first generation, like I said, it's okay. This is for everyone and anyone who wants more information. So, this specific webinar series is about going to be about college jargon and what it all means. So, as I mentioned, just make sure you have something to take a note on and just grab a couple pens, papers. Like I said, it will be recorded, so don't worry if you miss something. Okay. And for those of you who just joined, once again, my name is Michelle. I'm a first year admission counselor here at Elmhurst University. I was first generation too, which is why I want to take on this webinar to, share my experiences and anything that you guys need to know throughout the college process. Okay, so, and it's just my Bitmoji if you guys like Bitmojis like I do. Okay. So we're gonna begin, and some of these words you've already heard, which is okay if you have, but I know not everyone has heard them yet, so I'm just gonna go over them, because I myself never knew like the actual technical terms. So now we're gonna start with college versus university with college jargon. This is just like the admission words that you're probably gonna hear, throughout this year. Um, so Elmhurst University actually just became Elmhurst University. We were Elmhurst College, as you guys can see from my hat, just repping the old wear. So we were Elmhurst College because we focused more on, undergraduate studies, just for bachelor's. That was like our main focus. And usually the difference between college and university is colleges tend to focus more on undergraduate programs. They tend to focus more like, on students who want to receive bachelor's, but the past couple of years, and we still obviously are in the works of more. We've been adding a lot of master's programs. So for those of you who, want to do something beyond your bachelor's after you graduate, who want to pursue your master's, I highly encourage that. Um, so that's why we became Elmhurst University. And we want everyone to know that we are a four-year college. We are a university here. So that's also why we decided to change it to university. So I think it's awesome. We actually just changed it in July 2020. So during the pandemic. So if you guys haven't heard about it, because we were kind of quiet about it, I would say. We didn't mean to, but it's just how it came out. And then speaking of college and university, so there are private and public universities, colleges. So there really isn't a big difference. You get the same experience, but with private colleges like Elmhurst University, which is a private college, they tend to be smaller in terms of like students. So we tend to focus more on our students, dedicate our time to our students. Typical classrooms tend to be an average of 20 to 25 students per class. So if you guys like that small classroom setting, highly encourage it. And obviously, we're not funded by the government, so we tend to be a little more pricey, I would say. But as a former student, I would say it's not bad because we do private colleges too tend to offer a lot more scholarships, I would say, merit scholarships, and just other detailed scholarships like first generation scholarships, legacy. We try to make it as affordable as possible. And then we have more focused studies, I would say. So we still have a good amount of majors, but I would say we are more focused. For example, Amherst University is a liberal arts institution. So we tend to focus more on like the sciences, um, arts, and just everything along those lines. Um, but of course, we still offer a variety. And public colleges offer, I would say, way over 100 majors, even like close to 200. So they're very much more broad, I would say. But like I said, there's really no difference. And public universities are funded by the government, so they are a little more affordable, I would say. But they do offer less scholarships depending on the school. So at the end, it evens out. So there really is no difference. They're both, 4 years. I know public colleges do tend to make, change things up depending on like their like classroom setting. There are more lecture halls, I would say. But yeah, there's not a huge difference, I would say, with private and public colleges. It all evens out at the end. And then next, we're going to talk about early action versus early decision. And also I'm going to try to speak slower. But this is going to be a very fast webinar. So early action versus early decision. So Elmhurst University is early action. So early action means that you just get an earlier admission decision. So for example, our early action deadline is November 1st. So if you guys haven't applied, I highly encourage it. It is Monday, so I would encourage you guys to apply as soon as possible if you want to reach the early action deadline. Early action is just, like I said, you will be getting your admission decision in December. So other colleges may offer them earlier, but us specifically, our early action deadline is November, and we give the admission decisions in December. So those are going to be official. You guys get a special gift, and what's awesome is that you get an extra $500 per year just by applying early. So yeah, I like to say a little goes a long way. Um, Trust me, it will be very useful. And then do not confuse us with early decision. We are not early decision, which is actually good because some colleges are early decision, and that's okay. But the thing is that with early decision, which brings me to my next point, they are binding. So if you hear that a college is early decision, binding means they will penalize you. Basically, you will have to go to that college. Um, or else they will penalize you. They charge you if you decide to withdraw. So be careful with that. But early action is not the same as early decision. Going back to us, since we are action, we are non-binding, meaning non-binding. We don't penalize you. I like to say no harm, no foul. We don't, force you to come to our school, even if you apply early or anything. So I think it's awesome. You can just tell us that you don't want to go to Elmhurst, and we, easily withdraw your application. No problem there. So I think that's awesome. We don't like tend to like chase you guys down or penalize you in any sort of way. And now moving on. So rolling admission. A lot of colleges are rolling admission. Um, One of them, of course, is Elmhurst University. Rolling admission means that there is no deadline for when it comes to applying. Obviously, there's a deadline for early action if you want your decision as soon as possible. But for rolling admission is basically after November 1st, obviously you can still apply. You just won't get that extra $500 or for your decision, you will get it accordingly to when you apply. So you won't necessarily get it by December. Let's say you apply late November, you'll obviously get it a few weeks after, maybe like closer to January, depending. But rolling admission means you can apply whenever you'd like. I like to say never do this because you don't want to be stressed. But there's students that have applied a week, literally a week before classes start in August. So you can do that. I just obviously it'll be a little more stressful for you. But you can definitely do that. We don't have a deadline. Um, but yeah, I just say like don't put that stress on you. So after that, I do want to say that we are test optional. So that's another term that you're going to hear. So a lot of schools either are not or are test optional. We are. Um, we weren't test optional before, but due to COVID, we understand students have been through a lot. And obviously, I totally understand that. We try to be very lenient, flexible when it comes to the admission process. Um, so for test optional, students are allowed to submit an essay. So before we did require only test scores, but now students can either submit their test scores or go test optional, meaning they don't have to submit any SAT scores or ACT scores. So once again, we're test optional. So feel free to send an essay if you don't want to send in your test scores. And I say you can get more money awarded to you in terms of scholarships because of your essay, as long as it's well written, grammatically correct, well structured, you can get extra money based off of that. So highly encourage that test optional option. Always select yes if you want to do an essay or love writing. But of course, if you do like your test scores, feel free to send those instead. So now with gen eds, this is another term that you're going to hear. If you visit a college or, if you visited us, we're going to mention that if you ever asked like how your years are going to look like in college. So for Elmhurst University specifically, we're obviously going to require gen eds. A lot of schools are going to require gen eds. So gen eds are just basically core classes that you need in order to obtain a bachelor's degree. They are like, your typical English, math class, science, physical science. So At the end, we want students to be, have that diversity of classes and that will allow them to just it's easier to obtain a job when you have more knowledge in certain core classes. So we want students to have the best education as possible. So those are basically what gen eds are. They're just more classes that students have to take, but either regardless if you take, you know, a lot of classes, they still graduated within 4 years. We just, offer that diversity for students instead of them just focusing on one certain subject. And that usually typically happens freshman and sophomore year, mixed with their major classes, of course. Now, biggest word, I just wanted to put it here just in case anyone needs to hear it. So, first generation. Once again, first generation are students whose parents did not obtain a bachelor's degree. So if they went to college but did not graduate, they're still considered, the students still considered first generation. Just wanted to put it out there just in case anyone didn't know. Um, and then next comes legacy. So legacy, you're gonna get this question asked by colleges, and you probably already have. For those of you who haven't heard what legacy means, legacy is just basically if any immediate family members came to Elmhurst, for example, you can get an extra scholarship. Um, Other family members like aunts, uncles, cousins you're considered a legacy, but with a lot of colleges and Elmhurst included, we only offer scholarships if immediate family members went, like sister, brother, parents, grandparents, and it's only that when we offer a scholarship. And then now moving on is more simpler words, but I just wanted to put it out there in case some students got confused. I know I did. So, undergraduate versus graduate. So, undergraduate is anyone who's pursuing any sort of like bachelor's degree. Graduate is for anyone who's graduated and wants to pursue, a master's degree or wants to, take a graduate program. So yeah. So if you obviously, or especially if you're still filing for FAFSA, you're gonna make sure you select undergraduate in case, you don't select that. Because I know sometimes I got confused. Okay, so next is counselor versus advisor. So this is something that I myself got confused a lot. And I know some students have gotten confused with that, which, like I said, is totally okay. Nothing wrong with that. But counselor versus advisor. So do not get this confused. So I'm a first year admission counselor. So obviously there's admission counselors, just counselors, and advisors. So admission counselors, of course, like me, we tend to just, walk you through the admission process, help you find the right fit for you, because at the end of the day, we want you to find the right school for you. We don't want to force you to go to a school that, you're not going to enjoy, because you're investing in yourself at the end of the day, and you want to end up going to a good school that you're going to have fun in and, obviously excel in terms of your curriculums and all of that. So this is like what we do is we're trying to help you, just guide you throughout that whole process, because college is scary and I totally get that. And we're here, throughout up until now to when you begin classes at a college. So, we're always, even then, we're still here to help, but that's our main role. Now, counselors in general, for example, there are high school counselors too who, help you prepare for the life after the high school life. And then there's counselors in general who are similar to therapists. So obviously we're not that here, but then advisor is the biggest one. So advisors, because I know sometimes students get confused with counselors and advisors. So even though I'm an admission counselor, unfortunately cannot help you. We're always here, to share a lot of knowledge when it comes to majors and, academic programs. But advisors are the ones who are more, who are experts in the academic major. So, for example, if you want to do nursing, obviously we know a good amount of that. We know like the typical process. But if you want to know in depth, like more about nursing, education, the advisors are there for you. Advisors at Elmhurst and in general at other schools are usually professors too. So they're the ones who are going to be like helping you curate that schedule, helping you plan everything out, plan out your 4 years, and helping you graduate on time. Advisors, will be telling you what classes to take. And if you are lost or, you need help, they're there to help you too. Advisors usually are the ones who, already have a PhD, have a doctorate, have a master's. They're the ones who, like I said, are specialized in a certain area. So, and like I said, they're going to be your go-to person for the next 4 years throughout college. So definitely, have a good relationship with them because they also will be sending you out, um, which might be too early to talk about this, but they're going to be the ones who are going to recommend you internships or who are going to recommend you to an internship. So definitely make sure you keep that close connection with them. Now, another term that you're going to hear is full time versus part time. Sometimes it gets confusing. So, full time, which is very surprising to everyone. I was surprised when I was first starting my college, experience. So, full time means that the student is taking 4 classes in total, depending on the school, but mainly 99% of the schools, universities, full time is 4 classes per semester, which I actually will talk to about that in a few slides. So full time, if you're taking 4 classes per semester, you're considered full time. May not sound like a lot, but trust me, you're given more workload, which is also not, I promise, not scary. But 4 classes are the same as 8 classes at a high school. You're just working more on a certain subject. So that's what full time is. Part time is usually any class. If you're taking maybe 2 classes. Sometimes some schools do 3 classes and under, but most of the time, part-time are for students who are doing 2 classes per semester, who, let's say, which is totally okay, are doing full-time work instead and decide to come in part-time for school, which is okay. Everyone works at their own pace. But that's usually what part-time means. Usually with part-time, it's hard to be eligible for more financial aid and scholarships as well because students are part-time, so they might not get the same coverage. But usually 99% of the student body is full-time, or 90%, I would say, depending. Um, it's full-time where they obviously financial aid and scholarships are covered, throughout the whole process. So just keep that in mind if you ever want to maybe go part-time later on. And then next is articulation agreement. I'm not sure if I have any transfer students here, but even if you, let's say, want to go to community college before you start like your actual university process. So articulation agreement means that we are partnered with a lot of community colleges. So for example, like Harper, Oakton, Triton, Morton College. There's so many schools, community colleges around the Chicago area. And usually the ones that are around Elmhurst are the ones that have a partnership, which is leads on to the articulation agreement. So if you get an associate's in arts or sciences, we have this agreement where you won't have to take, because sometimes you have to take like 1 or 2 gen eds when you come to Elmhurst. But with that agreement, you won't have to take as many gen eds. And then you go right into like your major and everything. But you obviously still be graduating within 2 years as long as you have all the classes that we require. And obviously you work with us, to make sure all the classes transfer over. So that's the articulation agreement. It's just making your life easier if you go to community college first. And then speaking of, I also have associate's degree and bachelor's degree. So once again, if anyone is wondering, so I want to go back to first generation. Even if your parents obtained a associate's degree, you are still considered first generation. Just wanted to put it out there. So associate's degree is basically earned within 2 years. Usually you earn that during or throughout a community college. So if you go to community college, you typically get your associate's degree. Um, I'd say if you are thinking about going to a 4 year after, if you do attend community college, make sure you do associates in arts or sciences. Those are the 2 biggest ones that will help you transfer easily, especially to Elmhurst. So just keep that in mind. And then, of course, bachelor's degree is earned usually typically within 4 years. And this just more specialized towards what you want to do. And then once again, if you missed any of this, I'll be posting this on YouTube. So no, don't worry about, trying to remember everything. Okay. So next in college jargon, we have financial terms. So these are big ones. I'm not gonna lie. There's a lot that I didn't know myself. When I was beginning my college experience. So the first one is cost of attendance, COC. So COC is just basically the full receipt, I would say. Obviously, is without scholarships, without anything. So this is I like to say at Elmhurst University, you never pay full price. So obviously, when you see COC, do not freak out. But COC is just the cost of attendance. So It's just any extra fees, room and board if you decide to live on campus, mixed with tuition altogether. So usually, like, let's say if you do want to live on campus, usually your COC would be like around $51,000, give or take. So that's just the total cost of attendance. But it's just like obviously before you're awarded everything. So don't let that number scare you. Um, FAFSA, of course, is your best friend. You're going to be filing that every year, unless you absolutely cannot. It is required by Illinois. FAFSA is just something that you're going to hear all the time. You're going to have to file that every year before the approaching year. Um, just so you know you're eligible for grants, which I'll get into in a few minutes. And then FERPA is so that I always give me one second. So FERPA is basically, if you hear that, it's basically just kind of protecting your children's information. So for those students who turn 18, and of course, like, it's always good to share your information with your parents, but it's just basically privacy, offering that privacy um, towards your student. So if the student isn't 18 yet, obviously all of the information will be shared with the parents because of all of the rules in general. And then once the student does turn 18, um, they will have that right to, it's going to be different when it comes to sharing information, like private, very private personal information. That won't be shared with the parents unless the student wants to, because we understand once you're 18, you're an adult and you want to keep some information private, but that's totally depending on the student as well. And then EFC is estimated family contribution. So this you're gonna hear a lot. EFC is basically the number of like the household income, and just like, and based off of like that, everything that you answer in the FAFSA is how. Obviously, I'm not. I don't work for the financial aid services, but for those who are in the financial aid services, if you haven't met them yet, they're the ones who are going to use that information, that EFC, and with that EFC, they're gonna determine how much money you're gonna get. So whatever like you're earning, all of that together, they're gonna get the estimate, and then award you your grants, and then obviously the least favorite word, loans, if you want them. So that's just basically what it means. And then assets, I'm just including this because I know I've had a lot of students confused when it comes to filing the FAFSA. Assets are just basically anything, that you own, any like savings, funds, all of that together. It's just a question that FAFSA asks in case you haven't filed your FAFSA yet. And I just wanted to include it there. Um, and then grants. So grants, I don't know why I put that separately, but grants with MAP grants and Pell grants it's basically free money. And that comes through the FAFSA. So that is from the government, not from us. So for the grants, like I said, it's free money. It's nothing that you have to pay back. Usually, it's going to be Pell Grant or MAP Grant or both. It really depends on the household income. Once again, like, it depends on the EFC and how much you're going to get. But yeah, grants is free money. It's awarded to you besides the scholarships that are already offered. So all of this is going to go to you once you get admitted to your school. You're going to get that financial aid as well, as long as you put it in FAFSA, as long as you say like what school you want to go to. For example, Elmhurst, you'd be making sure you add Elmhurst to that list, so we could award you, the specific financial aid besides the scholarships. And then after that, of course, scholarship. Scholarship is what we give, and anything outside our university. So if you want to apply for anything externally, I know there's a lot of companies, or maybe the place you work for, that offers scholarships. And then of course it's our scholarship as well. So like I said, it's also free money, nothing that you have to pay back. Especially with merit scholarships, it's something that you earned. So yeah, so grants and scholarships are usually just they're free money. And then there's least favorite word, which I know not many like to hear. That's loans. So loans don't have to be accepted when you do end up, which we'll actually have another webinar with loans in a few months. So you don't have to worry about this right now, because it's too early right now to even worry about that right now anyways. So loans, there's unsubsidized and subsidized. So obviously there's loans that I don't have your information about, that you can apply through by yourself, like banks, your own bank, Discover. But for this specifically, there's subsidized and subsidized loans, and that you're gonna get through, FAFSA. So depending on what you answer, you're gonna get that offered, but you're not forced to accept it, of course. And unsubsidized loans are usually loans that acquire interest throughout your college experience, and you are allowed to pay for them if you want. Let's say you do take out a loan, hypothetically speaking, you're all allowed to pay that interest off while you're in school, but you don't have to. But it does like acquire, as months pass by. And then subsidized is loans that you don't have to pay interest, or the interest won't accumulate until you graduate. So, for example, me, like, I'm going to be honest, I took out a loan after I graduated, like my subsidized loan, like the interest started acquiring after I graduated, but not before, not while I learned college, not for subsidized. So if you ever want to take out a loan, I highly encourage the subsidized just because interest won't acquire until after you graduate. Plus, you get a 6-month grace period if you do get the loans through the government specifically. Anything outside is different. You have to agree with them specifically, but government specifically, anything from FAFSA, you will get a 6-month grace period, and then you will have to start paying them off. But like I said, we'll go over loans in another webinar, so don't worry about that right now. Just wanted to throw out the terms real quick. And then plus loan are for parents who take out loans for their students. So plus loans, parents will have to pay that loan off themselves, or at the end when student is graduated, they are allowed to combine those loans with the student's loans, but that's something that you'd have to talk to with, FAFSA, like the financial aid services. And then federal work study. So you're probably going to see this later on if you did select yes for FAFSA in the FAFSA, that you want to do federal work study. You don't have to accept it if you are offered it. Usually federal work study, you work for it. So let's say you come to Elmhurst, you accept federal work study, you just had to be working anywhere on our campus, and then you'd be awarded $1,000 to $2,000 at the end of the semester. And then you can add that towards your tuition. And then once again, you don't have to accept it. It's just money that you work for that you can accept. And then Pell Grant and MAP Grant, I already talked about those. It's free money. Those are that's from the FAFSA, so that's basically up to the government. If you qualify for it based off of your income, household income, and everything else. And then net price calculator / net price. So net price is basically what you'll be owing after all your loans, if you take loans out. But after all your grants and scholarships, that's basically what you're going to be owing to Elmhurst or the university that you end up going to. So just an estimate. If you want to figure it out now, we have a calculator on our website. But I would wait until you actually get the financial aid scholarship package so you could see how much you'll be owing. And good news is you'll have your admission counselor with you, like me, for example. I'm not sure if any of my students are here, but your assigned admission counselor will help you figure it out as well. They will help you calculate all of scholarships that you got, grants, anything that you accepted, and they will help you determine your net price and see how much you will be owing. And also, we also accept payments. So if you want to do a payment plan, we'll help you out with that later on. But nothing to worry about right now in terms of that. So that's just a little bit of financial terms in case you haven't heard of those. Okay, so now college jargon during college and just any other words that you're going to hear throughout, your college experience. So first one is semester versus quarter. So I know a lot of colleges do this differently. I like to always compare this with DePaul. DePaul does quarters. So, depending on the school, usually there's typically, I know DePaul does it a little different, but in general, quarters are usually 3 quarters compared to semesters. Semester throughout that fiscal year is usually, one semester now, for example, we're in the fall semester, usually that's September through or August through December. That's a semester. And then after is usually February through May or June, depending on the school. That's a semester. So usually there's 2 semesters in the year at your school. So we do have semesters. So at Elmhurst, it's only 2 semesters. You take 4 classes, the first one, 4 classes, the next one. Quarters is different. So like I said, the DePaul is a quarter system, so you do tend to have a lot more tests, I would say, when the quarter ends. And basically, it's your fall, winter, and spring. So it's divided a little more different than semesters. There is no difference, I would say. It's still, you still get that good experience and help. Um, but also with quarters, you do start later. If you are wondering, obviously depending on the school, but majority of the schools tend to start late September, if they are in quarters, and they tend to end a little later, like in the middle of June. So that really depends on the school you choose. But we are in semesters. And then next is major minor. So in case you guys didn't know, so majors obviously, it's your academic program that you chose. And then minor is anything that you want to do as an endorsement, kind of. For example, if a student did psychology and, or let's say if a student majored in nursing and they want to do a minor, kind of like an endorsement, kind of having that emphasis as well with nursing. Let's say they minored in psychology. So it's not required to minor in anything, but it is there for you. Why not? Usually a student, falls for another subject as well, not just like the intended major, and they tend to take more classes for that. And that could be turned into a minor. Typically, it's 5 classes that's required for a minor, depending on the minor. But typically, it's 5 classes. Like I said, you don't have to. Um, but if you want to, use that for your resume later on, definitely very helpful. And next is department. So department is just, individualized departments for all the majors. For example, like you hear the communications department, the marketing department, the nursing department, anything, any building, or the admission, the admission department, depending on what you're looking for. So our different departments are going to be there for you. Depending on your major, you're going to be going to the communications department, let's say. Yeah, so just a little more of a broad word, but just in case you haven't heard of that. And then we have our prerequisites. So our prereqs are basically classes that you have to take in order to continue on to higher classes. For example, a prereq, let's say you're doing nursing. So nursing, your first year, if you start as a freshman, you'd be doing anatomy and physiology. So those are prereqs in order to actually start your actual nursing classes later. So it's just, pre-classes that you have to take in order to move on to like the next higher class. In this case, let's say like next level, I guess you could say. And then now we're going to go to credits. So, and credit hours. So credits is just basically, classes, let's say, for example, at Elmhurst, each class is worth 1 credit. So that's just basically how it is. But then do not confuse credits with credit hours. So credit hours are basically the amount of hours, that estimated amount of hours that you're going to put into a class. So let's say it depends on the school. Let's say if you go to a public school or community college first. So credit hours, they usually go by credit hours depending on the school, of course. Usually a class, also known as a credit, is going to be 4 hours. So let's say you're taking 4 classes, that's going to be 16 hours. So every school is different. At the end of the day, it all equals the same. It's just the amount of, the way they calculate things are different, but everything's the same thing. I'm not sure why we do this, but credit hours just basically the estimate of how much you're going to spend, working on a certain class. But like I said, 4 classes, 4 credits equal 16 credit hours, depending. And then midterm. So midterm, depending on the school, is usually like a test or paper that you have to do, in the middle of a semester. So you're just depending on the class. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, some classes professors are lenient, so not all of them offer or make you take a midterm. But midterms are like finals, but just like throughout the mid um, of the semester to see how much you've learned so far. Like I said, it's typically a test or a paper, depending. And then the add drop period. So if you hear that, once you're in college and you hear that, um, every school's different. Once again, I just like to emphasize that because I don't want you guys to think that every school's the same. So for example, Elmhurst, we have our add drop period. So usually our add drop period is basically, let's say you're not doing so well in a class, you're not enjoying it. We have our dropping period where you're not gonna really be penalized for dropping it, but not to confuse that with withdrawal. If you do drop the class, our ad drop period is usually from like August to like, if you're, let's say you're in a fall semester, it's usually from August to, I'd say, November. You won't be penalized. You just will have a W in your transcript. Nothing bad, but just make sure you don't do that often. Don't take advantage of that because it does look bad later on, for your future career. But now there's withdrawal. And that basically means is withdrawing from classes. But then there's a withdrawal period. So usually for Elmhurst University, that's within the first week that you start classes. So if you want to drop a class the first week of school, you won't have a W. It really depends on the school. So just make sure you keep an ear, I guess you could say, or eye, depending on if you read something. And those periods, if you are thinking of dropping a class, which I don't obviously recommend, but if you really need to, just know that with the ad drop period, if you do it within August through December, you will get a W in your transcript. Like I said, it's nothing terrible, but just make sure you don't do that more than twice because it will look bad. And then like withdrawal is basically dropping a class. And we also have, like I said, our withdrawal period. So if you that's very short, that's a week, but you're not penalized and you won't have a W. So it really depends on the school. We try to give that grace period within a week in case you don't like your professor or something right away. But just be careful. I would say keep an eye on your emails if you are thinking of dropping class the first week or, throughout the semester. And then we have pass fail. So typically we don't, if it's not a class for a major, we don't offer a pass fail. You can do pass fail, but you won't get credit. It depends on the class that you take. For example, with COVID, we did allow for students to get credit and still go pass fail just because we understand that COVID has been a hard time, have a hard time, part of our lives. It's just become a norm, which is sad, but students were allowed to pass fail, without getting penalized because usually we go by grades if it's for a class that you're working on for your major. And then in case I know you probably have heard of this word, but in case you haven't, we also have plagiarism. We're very strict. Every college is very strict on plagiarism. So please be careful later on when you turn something in. Make sure, if you are using a source to cite it, make sure you give them credit because you can get expelled, you can get suspended. So be careful with that. Just make sure you don't copy anyone. And if you use a source or a quote, make sure you cite it. And then commuter versus resident. So in case you guys didn't know, I know sometimes commuter, I myself didn't know what commuter was. I myself was a commuter. So commuter basically means anyone that lives at home or, in their own place outside of the college and drive to the school. And then resident is anyone who's dorming, who lives at the university or maybe lives in an apartment that's affiliated with a university. But anyone that, lives at home usually, or like I said, in their own place, but like outside of the university is a commuter. And also a fact is that for commuters, tuition at Elmhurst, it is 39,000. And for residents, it is 50,000. So just keep that in mind. If you ever want to commute, it's much more affordable. Now, moving along. So room and board, this is for residents. It's just room is obviously where you're going to live, the dorm hall. And then board is just the meal plan or estimated cost of the room and meal plan. And this you're going to hear a lot, especially at Elmhurst. And then JPass, this is just a Elmhurst thing. JPass is just an ID that you're going to get. Everyone is going to have their different words, but it's the ID you're going to get that you're going to need, to buy lunch if you are a resident or if you attend an event. It's just basically, an identity kind of thing. So at Elmhurst, it's called a JPass, and every other school names it differently. And we also have Dean's List. In case you haven't heard of it, Dean's List is just basically any student that gets a 3.75 GPA that semester when it ends. You're on the Dean's List, which is an awesome accomplishment. Even if you don't, that's okay. But usually if you see Dean's List, that's a good thing. So if you ever get a letter and say you were in a Dean's List, don't freak out. And then I apologize. I mentioned Gen Eds again here just because that's something you're going to hear during college as well. But as I explained previously, it's just we like to, offer a good amount of diversity when it comes to taking classes. It's at the end of the day, it's for your own good too, to be, well-rounded with like everything that you're taking, and you can take that onto your career. And then speaking of careers, so for those of you who haven't heard of internship, which is totally okay if you haven't or have, internship is just a job, I would say, or like a project that you're doing within, your time in college or after too. But usually, internships are temporary, and depending on where you work or what you do, they can be unpaid. Unfortunately, I hope soon all of the internships end up being paid, but it depends where you work. Some of them pay, some of them don't. But internship is just basically something that's temporary. It's good to have those, so please make sure you get at least 2 in when you're in college, depending what you're majoring in. We have our WCP center who helps you, look for internships, and the professors who send you internships too, which I think is awesome personally. Um, it's just having that experience before you graduate, and it's good because that experience is perfect for, any job that you're applying for in the future. For example, I was in 2 internships before I graduated, and I got a lot of good knowledge, a lot of good recommendations from them. And thanks to them, I was able to get a job before graduating. So I think internships are always very awesome, of course, along with your academic experience. But yeah, so as I mentioned, this was going to be a shorter webinar just because, college jargon is just more for students who want to know more about certain words, vocabulary that you're going to hear a lot during the college process, especially at Elmhurst. Um, and then we have my upcoming webinar on the November 10th, and that is the questions you should be asking. For those of you who want to attend, I'm going to go over questions that maybe let's say you don't know what to ask. I'm going to tell you what to ask, when you visit colleges or Elmhurst. And that's going to be at 6:30, November 10th. Like I said, you don't need to attend, but if you want to, I'll be sending a lot of emails, unfortunately, for you guys. Um, and then we have our virtual open house this Saturday. For those of you who are interested, you get to learn more about your academic major. You get to meet your counselors. It's honestly a fun time, especially since it's virtual. You can just, pull up Zoom on your phone and listen to it while you're doing something else if you have to do something else. It starts at 9 a.m. Check-in starts at 8:30. But if you guys want to RSVP, let me know. It's a fun time. Like I said, you get to meet all of us and your academic program. So you get to see like the experts, your professors who, have a lot of knowledge and information on your specific major. Okay. And then once again, bonus information. I know I mentioned this before, but if you complete your application on or November or before November 1st, you will be considered for early action and you will receive an admission decision in early December. Typically it's December 1st, but who knows with like the mailing delays and everything. And then once again, you get an extra $500 just by applying early. Um, and then, of course, if you complete your FAFSA before November 1st, and I hope you guys have already completed it, we will also send you like the financial aid award with your admission decision, and scholarship list as well. And then, yeah, so that's basically what I have for you guys. So just make sure you guys are, meet that deadline if you are interested. If not, we're enrolling admission, so you can apply at any time. And then this is just for my information. If you guys have any questions after, there's my work phone number and my email. And then once again, we are on 190 Prospect Avenue, Elmhurst. If you want to visit, we have campus tours every day and visits with counselors every day. So you can stop by whenever you want. Schedule an appointment, please. If you guys have time, we offer winter ones too. But yeah, so now I'm just going to open it up if you guys have any questions. If not, then thank you guys so much for tuning in. Like I said, no pressure. And this one's more of a short webinar for you guys in case you guys, wanted to know more about like the college terms you've been hearing lately. Okay, so if we don't have any more questions, that's totally okay. Like I said, no pressure. Let me see. And yeah, and like I said, if you have any more questions after, feel free to let me stop recording.